Hey, good morning to both of you. Well, we know that one officer is okay, not injured at all, but this is an officer-involved shooting. One man was taken to the hospital with critical life-threatening injuries, and this is a live look of the scene right now. We're also told that Chief Manley will be coming here shortly to talk with the media and give us more information. But APD is responding to this officer-involved shooting here in the 7900 block of East William Cannon Drive. This was first reported around 3:45 this morning. Austin Travis County EMS first reported this, and then shortly after, Austin Police. So this is a live look of the scene. We're pushed back a little ways from where this is happening, but we do know Chief Manley will be arriving here shortly, and one man was taken to the hospital with critical life-threatening injuries, but thankfully no officers were injured. Back to you. Yeah, Lauren, we know that one man was taken to the hospital with critical life-threatening injuries. We're not sure how many officers are involved in this shooting, but APD did release a tweet saying no officers are injured. So we can assume that it is more than one officer involved in this incident. But Austin Travis County EMS was the first to respond here to the scene around 3:45 this morning. They did transport one man to a local hospital. The shooting happened off of East William Cannon near McKinney Falls Parkway. This is a new housing development called Easton Park in Travis County. You can see a good portion of this area is blocked off. We cannot get very close to the actual scene or the location of the shooting, but we do know that Chief Manley is on his way here, so hopefully we will get more information later throughout the morning. Back to you. Yeah, well, this is still a very active investigation. Austin police have not given us any updates yet, but we know the shooting was reported around 3:45 this morning. Austin Travis County EMS first responded to the scene here in the 7900 block of East William Cannon. This is very close to a new housing development, Easton Park and Bryant Park here in Travis County. Now, we know officers did respond here. There is some type of officer-involved shooting. We don't know the exact number of Austin police officers involved, but you can see just how many officers are still here on scene. So hopefully we will get more information. But again, one man was shot, taken to a local hospital. His condition is critical with life-threatening injuries. Back to you. Yeah, we know that that man was pronounced dead at the hospital. Chief Manley says he was in his late 20s, but this incident and this all unfolded starting last night. That's what Chief Manley just told us a few minutes ago, but this is still a very active scene. Chief Manley is expecting this area to be closed for several hours throughout the morning, but Chief Manley said this incident started last night around 10:30 when officers attempted to make a traffic stop off of I-35. Then that vehicle escaped. Police did not pursue that car. Officers then did some research to try to find the owner of that vehicle that escaped, and around midnight, police received another call from one of the registered owners, concerned because their son had texted them letting them know he had crashed the car off of William Cannon, which is near the scene where we're at right now. Officers then searched this area, found the vehicle, but Chief Manley says that vehicle they located is a different one than they tried stopping earlier in the night. Around 1:40, officers went up to the car. The man inside the car said he had a gun, pointed the gun towards his head. Officers called for backup. The suspect moved the gun from his head and started pointing it at the officers, and that's when two officers fired their weapons. The man was transported to a local hospital where he was later pronounced dead. Chief Manley says two officers have been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation, which is normal procedure for Austin police. But again, no officers were injured in this incident, but one man in his late 20s was killed. Back to you. Yeah, Lauren, the man was pronounced dead at the hospital. All that we know about him is that he was a 27-year-old Hispanic man. Chief Manley says this is an ongoing investigation and he has not been identified. But you can still see a very active scene here in Southeast Austin. Police are expected to be here for the next several hours. When Chief Manley spoke with the media, he said this incident actually started around 10:20 last night when officers attempted to make a traffic stop off of I-35 South. That vehicle escaped and police did not engage in a pursuit. Officers then did some research to identify the registered owner of that car. Then around midnight, police received another call from one of the registered owners concerned because their son had texted them, letting them know that he had crashed the car here off of East William Cannon. Officers then searched this area, located the vehicle around 1:40 this morning. Chief Manley says the vehicle they located is a different one than they tried stopping earlier in the night. Police made contact with the man in the car. He stated he had a gun and pointed it towards his head. The officer called for backup. The man then started raising his arms as if he was going to fire. That's when two officers shot the suspect. The man was pronounced dead at the hospital. Chief Manley tells us that this entire incident was captured on body cameras worn by the officers. Chief Manley says this is an ongoing investigation. Both of those officers who fired their weapons have been with Austin Police for less than 2 years, and both of them have been placed on administrative leave. I'll have another live report at 7 o'clock. Back to you. Good morning to both of you guys. Yeah, Austin Police will be out here for the next several hours. This is still an ongoing investigation. This incident all started around 10:30 last night with a traffic stop. Chief Brian Manley tells us that the driver reportedly escaped from police off of I-35 South, but later crashed his car in the 7500 block of East William Cannon. Police said they were able to locate the vehicle that was involved in that crash around 1:40, but it was a different vehicle from last night's incident. Officers then called for backup after claiming the suspect in the car had a gun. That suspect then reportedly pointed a gun to his head. Police then trying to de-escalate the situation during a press conference earlier this morning. Chief Manley said the suspect was in a position on the ground, but then got up and started raising both his hands and pointed the gun in the direction of the officers. At 1:45, police reported that shots were fired. The suspect was transported to a nearby hospital and was later pronounced dead around 3:30 in the morning, according to Austin Police. Chief Manley also says that he believes the person killed was a 27-year-old Hispanic man. Two officers fired their weapons and both have been placed on administrative leave. Well, police have not identified that man who was shot and killed earlier this morning. But when Chief Manley spoke to the media a couple of hours ago, he says this actually all started last night around 10:30 with a traffic stop. Chief Manley says the driver reportedly escaped from police off of I-35 South, but later crashed his car at this location off of East William Cannon. Police said they were able to locate the vehicle that was involved in that crash a few hours later, but it was a different vehicle from last night's incident. Officers then called for backup after claiming the suspect in the car had a gun. The suspect then reportedly pointed the gun towards his head, and police tried to de-escalate the situation during a press conference earlier this morning. Chief Manley said the suspect was in a position on the ground, but then got up and started raising both his hands, pointing the gun in the officer's direction. Around 1:45 this morning, police reported that shots were fired. The suspect was pronounced dead later at the hospital around 3:30 this morning. Chief Manley also says that he believes this man who was killed was a 27-year-old Hispanic man. Two officers fired their weapons, and both of them have been placed on administrative leave during the investigation. Back to you in the studio. Yeah, well, Chief Manley tells us that two Austin police officers have been placed on administrative leave during this investigation. Those two officers are the ones that fired at the suspect who ultimately died later in the hospital. But you can still see a very active scene out here. Chief Manley says this incident started really around 10:30 last night with a traffic stop. He says the driver, who ended up being the suspect in this case, reportedly escaped from police off of I-35 South, but later crashed his car in this location off of East William Cannon. Police said they were able to locate that vehicle that was involved in the crash about 3 hours later, just before 2 this morning, but it was a different vehicle from last night's incident. Officers did call for backup after they said the suspect had a gun in his car. That suspect then reportedly pointed the gun to his head. Police then tried to de-escalate the situation, and during a press conference earlier this morning, Chief Manley said the suspect was in a position on the ground, but then got up and started raising his hands and pointing the gun in the direction of those officers. Around 1:45 this morning, police reported that shots were fired and the suspect was transported to a nearby hospital, later pronounced dead around 3:30 this morning. Police did find a weapon near the vehicle. Chief Manley says that the suspect has not been identified yet, but we do know it was a 27-year-old Hispanic man. As for the reason of that initial traffic stop, Chief Manley says that is part of the investigation. Back to you. Yeah, Lauren, you mentioned this happened very early this morning. Well, the shooting happened around 1:45 this morning, and then the man was pronounced dead at the hospital roughly 2 hours after that. But still an active scene. Austin police are now combing through the evidence surrounding the car involved in the incident. But when Chief Manley spoke to the media, he said this actually started around 10:30 last night when officers tried to make a traffic stop off of I-35 South. That vehicle escaped and police did not engage in a pursuit. However, around midnight, police received another call from the registered owner of that vehicle. Manley says this person was concerned because their son had texted them saying he crashed the car somewhere off of East William Cannon, which is this location. Officers searched the area, located the vehicle around 1:40 this morning. Chief Manley says the vehicle they located is a different one than they tried stopping earlier in the night. Officers did call for backup because the suspect in the car allegedly had a gun pointing it to his head. Shortly after that, the officers say that this man started raising his arms as if he was going to shoot the officer. So that's when two officers started firing their weapons. Manley says the entire incident is captured on body cameras worn by the officers. This man was pronounced dead later at the hospital. Now, the suspect has not been identified, but Chief Manley believes he was a 27-year-old man. Those two officers who fired their weapons have been with APD less than 2 years, and both of them have been placed on administrative leave. Back to you in the studio. The man shot and killed was a 27-year-old Hispanic man. Chief Brian Manley tells us that this incident actually started last night around 10:30 with a traffic stop. Austin police say the driver reportedly escaped from police off of I-35 South, but later crashed his car in the 7500 block of East William Cannon. Police said they were able to locate the vehicle that was involved in the crash around 1:45 this morning, but it was a different vehicle from last night's incident. Officers then called for backup after claiming the suspect in the car had a gun. The suspect then reportedly pointed a gun to his head while police were trying to de-escalate the situation. Chief Manley says the suspect was in a position on the ground, but then got up and started raising both his hands, pointing the gun in the direction of the officers. Just before 2 this morning, police reported that shots were fired. The suspect was transported to a hospital, later pronounced dead around 3:30 this morning. The two officers who fired their weapons were with the police force for less than 2 years. Both of them have been placed on administrative leave. Reporting in Southeast Austin, Jacqueline Sarkeesian, Fox 7 Austin News.